You're sitting at your desk. It's 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. You've got $200 in your checking account that isn't spoken for. No bill attached to it. No name on it. Just sitting there. And for the first time, instead of spending it, you open a brokerage app. You've heard people talk about investing. You've seen the charts, the thumbnails, the guys online saying they turned 500 into 50,000. But right now, staring at this screen, you don't feel confident. You feel like you're about to hand $200 to a stranger and hope they don't run. Your thumb hovers over the deposit button. And the only thought in your head is this stupid? It's not stupid. It might be the smartest thing you've done all year, but not for the reason you think. Because that $200 isn't going to make you rich. Not next week, not next month, probably not next year. And anyone who tells you otherwise is selling you something. But what that $200 will do, if you understand what's actually happening once you press that button, is change the way you think about every dollar you earn for the rest of your life. Today I'm going to walk you through exactly what happens to your money the moment it enters the market. Step by step, no jargon, no hype. Just the truth about what $200 actually does when you put it to work. Stage 1. The deposit. Your money enters the system, you press the button. The $200 leaves your bank account. For a second, it feels like you lost it, like it's gone. Your checking balance drops and your stomach drops with it. But here's what actually just happened. That $200 moved from your bank, where it was earning you essentially nothing, into a brokerage account. It's still your money, it's still sitting there. It just changed addresses. Right now, it's in what's called a cash position. It hasn't been invested yet. It's like walking into a store and standing at the entrance. You're inside, but you haven't bought anything. This is where most people freeze. They deposit the money and then stare at the screen for 3 weeks trying to figure out the right thing to buy. Part of you already knows this feeling. You've downloaded the app before. Maybe you even signed up. But the money never moved because choosing felt like a test you hadn't studied for. So let's make the choice simple. Stage 2. The first buy. What you're actually purchasing. You're not going to pick a single stock, not today. Here's why. When you buy one company's stock, you're betting everything on that one company. If they have a bad quarter, your $200 takes the hit. If their CEO says something stupid on a podcast, your $200 takes the hit. One company, one bet, all the risk. Instead, you're going to buy something called an index fund, specifically one that tracks the S&P 500. That means your $200 doesn't go into one company. It gets spread across 500 of the biggest companies in the country. Tech, healthcare, banking, retail, energy, all of them at once. You're not betting on one horse. You're buying a piece of the entire race. And here's the part nobody explains clearly enough. You don't need to buy a full share. Most apps now let you buy fractional shares. So even if one share of the fund costs $450, your $200 buys you $200 worth. You own a real piece of it, not a simulation, not a game. Real ownership, you tap buy. The order fills in seconds. And just like that, you're an investor. Not because you're rich, because you decided to start. Stage 3, the first week, the emotional roller coaster day 1. You check the app. Your $200 is now $201.14. You feel like a genius. Day 2, it drops to $197.30. Your chest tightens. You think, I knew this was a mistake. Day 3, back up to $200.87. Okay, maybe it's fine. Day 4, down to $195.60. Now you're doing math. That's a $4.40 loss. That's a meal. That's gas. You could have just kept it. And then the other voice says, see? The market is rigged. Regular people don't win at this. Pull it out before you lose more. This is the moment that separates people who build wealth from people who don't. Not the deposit, not the buy. This moment, the first dip. Because the market doesn't go up in a straight line. It never has. It goes up, it drops, it climbs, it dips, it recovers, it stumbles, and over long stretches of time, it trends upward. But in the short term, it feels like chaos. Your $200 is going to bounce around. That's not a sign that something is wrong. That's how this works. The only mistake you can make right now is pulling it out because of a feeling. Stage 4, the first year, what $200 actually does. Let's zoom out. Your $200 is sitting in an S&P 500 index fund. You didn't touch it. You didn't panic. You let it sit. Over the last 100 years, the S&P 500 has averaged roughly 10% per year. Some years it's up 25. Some years it's down 15. But the long-term average, 10%. At that rate, your $200 after 1 year becomes roughly $220. $20. That's it. That's the big reveal for year 1. $20. And part of you is thinking, I waited a whole year for 20 bucks? I could have made that in an hour. And you're right. On its own, $200 invested once doesn't change your life. But here's where the real math begins. What if instead of investing $200 once, you invested $200 every single month? Same fun, same strategy, just automatic. After 1 year, you've put in $2,400. At 10% average growth, your account is sitting around $2,520. Fine, nothing crazy. After 5 years, $12,000 invested. Your account is worth roughly $15,500. That's $3,500 the market just gave you for doing nothing except not quitting. After 10 years, $24,000 invested. Your account is worth approximately $38,000 to $40,000. You've nearly doubled your own money, and you never picked a single stock. You never watched a single earnings call. You just showed up with $200 a month and didn't flinch. That's what $200 does. Not once, repeatedly. Stage 5, the compound curve. Where it gets unfair, here's where the math starts to feel broken. In your favor. The first 5 years, the growth feels slow. You're doing all the work. Your contributions are what's building the account. The market's help is nice, but it's modest. Then around year 7 or 8, something flips. The interest starts earning interest. The growth on last year's growth starts compounding. And now the market is doing more of the heavy lifting than you are. By year 15, at $200 a month, you're looking at roughly $75,000 to $80,000. You only put in $36,000. The rest, almost half, came from compound growth. By year 20, you're approaching $120,000 to $130,000. You contributed $48,000. The market gave you the rest. And if you started at 22, by 42, while your friends are just now panicking about retirement, you're sitting on 6 figures that grew while you slept, while you ate breakfast, while you argued about parking. It didn't care. It just compounded. This is what nobody showed you in school, not because it's complicated, because it's boring in the beginning. The first few years feel like nothing is happening, and most people quit during the boring part. The people who build wealth aren't smarter. They're just still in the market when the compound curve kicks in. Stage 6, the real return, what changes inside you. But here's what I think is the actual return on that first $200. It's not the money, it's what happens to you. The first time you invest, something shifts in how you see a dollar. Before, every dollar was either spent or saved. Now there's a third option. It can work. You start looking at a $50 dinner differently. Not because you're cheap, because you now know what $50 can become in 15 years if you let it compound. You're not depriving yourself. You're seeing the full picture for the first time. You start building something you've never had before, financial momentum. And momentum changes behavior. The person who has $2,000 invested doesn't think the same way as the person who has zero. They protect it, they add to it, they plan around it. Part of you already knows this. You felt the difference between having nothing saved and having even a small cushion. Investing does the same thing, but on a longer timeline with a steeper curve. That first $200 isn't an investment, it's an identity shift. You go from someone who spends everything they earn to someone who owns a piece of the economy. And once that switch flips, it doesn't flip back. Here's the line I want you to carry out of this video. You don't need to be rich to invest. You need to invest to become rich. $200, an index fund, automatic contributions. That's the whole strategy. Not because it's trendy, because it's worked for 100 years. If this made investing feel less like a gamble and more like a system, subscribe. I break down money the way it actually works, not the way people pretend it does. And if you want the conversation to keep going, join us on Telegram. The link's in the description. That's where the real community lives. I'll see you in the next one.